There's been numerous films centering on the Krays, and finally with Code of Silence, we finally get a fresh new perspective on it. With the downfall of them, and you play Nipper Reed, who's a detective down. How and why did you get involved in this story?
You're right. There's been numerous films about, and I wasn't sure that we needed another one, to be honest. So when they brought it to me, I kind of went, I think we've done this, and they said, as you said, they kind of said, they said to me, that we've got a fresh perspective, and so I read it, and I thought they'd done a really lovely job of sort of getting into Nipper's head, and so I play Nipper Reed, who is the detective who was in charge of the operation that brought them down, and what's interesting about him is that he had been tasked with doing it before, a couple of years before, but nobody would talk, nobody would speak against them, because there was this climate of fear, Code of Silence, that they had, where nobody wanted to everybody lived in fear of their lives, and people had gone missing, and had ended up with concrete boots or whatever, and so when I read it, I was sort of interested, and it was nicely constructed, and my interest was piqued. And then I had a Zoom with Ben Mole, the director, and amount of research and prep that he had done, and his idea for how he wanted to show it. And show what was going on inside Nipper's mind, I thought was really interesting. It's a fairly low budget film, so we money to recreate 1960s London, and so what he had decided to do was they'd found this old abandoned warehouse / factory, and with all of these rooms and old turbines and corridors and sort of spaces, and Ben basically showed me the pictures on that first Zoom and shared them with me on the Zoom, and basically said, I want this space, this place, to feel like it's the inside of Nipper's brain. Like he goes down blind alleys and he's going down these corridors trying to find something to throw at the Krays, and I thought that was a really and I really enjoyed him, and so I jumped on board because I thought it was a story that had never really been told. And then in the meantime, of course, I then read Nipper's autobiography. He had very reluctantly an autobiography. He didn't want to do it. He didn't feel that people would be interested, but incredibly modest man. And then I started reading about him and the respect within the industry, within his business of him and what he had achieved. Left school when he was 14, had no qualifications of any sort, and he was incredibly smart. And so the level that he got to within the police force was kind of extraordinary. And so I was really sort of him as a man.
Yeah, there must have been there is a whole wealth of information about the Krays, but I mean, was your kind of research just from that book, or did you even manage to talk to Nipper, because he only passed away last year as well, didn't he?
I didn't. He had died in 2020. We shot in like April 21, so unfortunately I didn't. And but he had an amazing innings. He was like 95. Yeah.
Okay. There's also, there's still a lot of people out there who reckon that they were around, when incidents happened. They were in the pub and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Did you manage to get down to the East End at all, or come across any of these kind of people?
Unfortunately, we were in lockdown. This was the second lockdown. and everything was closed. When I flew in to do the job, I had 10 days of quarantine, so I couldn't go to the East End. My family are from that area, my grandparents and stuff, and I've actually been to the Blind Beggar before. So I had gone to the Blind Beggar, I 30 years ago when I was like 20 and 2021, because I was fascinated by it, and I did one of those like East End gangster walks that you can go on, you know, pub crawl. And so I've been there before. I'm not from the East End, I'm from Essex, but as I said, my family had been, and so I've spent quite a lot of time in and around that area, and know it fairly well. I did quite a bit of research on the cases themselves, and read a bit about the Krays, and mostly read about Nipper though, you know, and tried to sort of immerse myself in his world and how he'd grown up. I was really interested in the fact that he too was a boxer and the Krays were boxers. And so I think that there would have been, you know, even though they wouldn't have liked him because he was on the side of the law, I think there would have been a sort of a mutual respect for his boxing ability and for the fact that he came from a sort of similar background to them. So I liked the idea that there was some kind of mutual respect between them.
Yeah, yeah. And also you've got Ronan Summers, who plays both Kray twins. How are these scenes filmed? Because that can't be easy.
It's not easy.
Budget as well.
It's not easy, and I thought Ronan did an amazing job. He's not in the film very much because, as we've already discussed, it's really about Nipper. It's not really about the Krays. It's about what's going on in Nipper's brain. And given that, I think Ronan is very present, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's very present in the film.
Very commanding.
Yeah. And when you're, you know, it's a real technical feat doing twin stuff. I actually, my first episode that I ever directed of True Blood, I had a similar thing where Sam Trammell becomes two different people and he's on screen together, and there's whole scenes where it's just him and him on screen together. And so I sort of knew a little bit about how you have to shoot that process. Ronan wanted to sort of delineate between who Reggie and Ronnie were and how they interacted together, and so there were certain sort of physical mannerisms, but also things makeup wise that they did differently. So what we would invariably do would shoot the beginning of the day would be with him as Reggie, and would shoot the bits and pieces with him as Reggie, and his angles and the wides, the close-ups of him, and like if there was a bit of a shoulder of me, those pieces. And then while they were shooting, get his makeup change and his costume change and the little bits and pieces that he did differently, I'd then do my stuff while with somebody reading in his lines, you know, because you obviously don't see them in my shot as much. There were things that we did where you did, and obviously we'd do those with him, but it makes for quite a sort of broken up day.
Yeah,
you're sort of doing bits and pieces, and it's this sort of giant jigsaw that you have to do. But I really love the technical aspect of filmmaking. So anything that you can do, there's a couple of little moments where we see both of them in the same frame as me, and that's like little technical stuff that's really cleverly sort of pieced together.
Yeah, it was very clever actually. I didn't even notice any kind of pokery going on there. Going back to that warehouse, actually, there's obviously that one scene where you got all these men confined into that one space, which is quite a risky move. Did that actually happen?
Honestly, not really.
Okay.
But what Nipper did do was, in the real case, was he played everybody against each other. He did that thing that we do sort of trying to get information where you go, oh, so-and-so said that you had done blah. Is that right? That's not true. I didn't do that. Oh, they must be wrong then. Who said that? No, I can't tell you. That kind of thing, where you're trying to fish for information by sort of trying to reveal other things and trying to get people to do stuff. So in essence, he played everybody against each other until one of them buckled.
Yeah.
Which in actuality was Albert Donahue, who was their driver. And so the way that we tried to show that was, well, I don't want to give it away in the film, but it was a way of, as I've already said, we weren't in the East End. We were concentrating very specifically on Nipper and his men, as opposed to all of the Krays cronies, for want of a better word. Cronies, not spelled with a K. So I thought Ben's resolution of how to do that in that room was a clever way of sort of doing a sort of succinct telling of what really happened,
Yeah, okay.
So sort of, you have to sort of take filmic liberties in order to sort of move the story along sometimes,
Yeah, I get that. I've up now. I could sit here talking to you all night.
Me too, Sarah.
Well, thank you so much for your time and good luck with the film.
Thank you, lovely. Take care.
Yes, bye-bye.